argue that under the war powers. Oh, all right. Good evening. Um, Sorry for the delays this evening. This is my first time. War powers. Oh, 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 oh. All right. Good evening. Um, oh, have to argue that under. Have to argue that under. Have to argue that under. Hello? Hey, is the audio coming through finally? I hope so. Hello? Hey, is the audio coming through? Okay, there we go. I think it is. Super. Cool. So, let me just double check on YouTube. Sorry, it's sorry for all the back and forth. I'm a little bit weirded out by the need to manage. Hello? Is the audio coming through? Oh, multiple platforms at the same time, but okay, it looks like it's coming through, so I'm just going to go ahead and take maybe another 10 minutes here and wrap up. Yeah, my apologies. I got disconnected because my battery died very unexpectedly. It was supposed to last a good while longer, even though it was getting low. So, um, yeah, let me just go ahead and jump in and finish. So yeah, Geneva Conventions, you can't have it both ways. You either say, okay, they're war prisoners, and therefore the Geneva Convention war prisoner protections apply, or they're just, civilians, and therefore civilian protections apply, of their native countries in addition to international law. So, like, Trump is committing egregious international crimes and human rights violations, and his people are very much on board with that because they want to send a clear message. The clear message is they can do whatever they want. And maybe the only person who's going to get around to punishing them is God himself. But if God is the one punishing you, that's the kind of prison cell you aren't escaping. You're not getting out of that. And there can be no appeal from his judgments. So, you don't want to get on his wrong side. Let me just put it that way. So, yeah, there's that issue. There's the posing as prisoners. There's the making a mockery of international law. This one is frankly disgusting. Elon Musk's feed AI all court cases, promises it will replace judges because, this is from abovethelaw.com. I don't agree with, I've been saying that a lot of things are stupid and idiotic. There are some things here that are permissible, some things that are acceptable, some things that may be even intelligent to do, and there are some things that are not permissible, things that are just pure evil. So I'm not going to read this obviously biased article, but what I do want to do, hang on, I got my tabs mixed up, is I do want to examine what he actually had to say on the subject. Defiant Ells says, best idea ever, to this little post snapshot that says, Elon Musk says Grok will soon be able to read the omnibus bills Congress likes to make and summarize them so politicians can't hide stuff from us. So, this is a legitimately good use of conversational AI, so-called. I have to say this, there's no such thing as AI. Artificial intelligence, you can't create intelligence. But yeah, so these machines, he's having them summarize these bills. And I did actually do this during the last legislative session in the state of Utah. And what I found is that several of the out-of-the-box chatbots can sometimes find constitutional issues with bills. And part of the reason for that is because there were some awfully spicy, like really obvious due process and human rights violations in various of the bills that were passed by the Utah legislature and nationwide, and I've discussed some of that in a previous human rights discussion. So it's not in principle a bad idea to do this and get help. The issue is, like, in my experience from what I've seen, like, they will flag like maybe less than half of the bills that actually contain really massive poison pills. And part of the reason for that is because the modern legal corpora, even going back hundreds of years, legal corpora exist for the following reason. They exist so as to be able to equivocate. That's what judges and lawyers want to be able to do in most cases. They want to be able to, if this is a defendant that they like, they want to be able to try to skirt the requirements of justice and be like, well, here's some extenuating interpretation that makes it so we can do what we want. But also, if the person on the other hand, if the defendant is somebody they don't like, they want the ability to be able to say, well, we interpret the law in this way, and according to this, you are guilty. Dinesh D'Souza found himself facing just such an unequal justice system. And so you will find contradictions in the precedent, and that is what my petition to the United States Supreme Court is about. That's what it exposes, is the fact that precedent does not agree with itself. And you can actually train chatbots to be equivocal. We have all experienced this. It's an extremely common phenomenon. It's extremely relatable. We all understand this phenomenon. At least we have experience with it. And it comes about when it's like that scene from Princess Bride. Give us the gate key. I have no gate key. Fezzik, break his arms off. Oh, you mean this gate key? So you just have to know how to talk to these people, right? If you say the magic word, if you say pretty please, if you say Simon Says, you can get a judge or a prosecutor to act a certain way. That is, if you're the right person with the right kind of money or influence or power, whatever, right? Then they can let the guilty go free and they can punish the innocent, right? That's the whole point of having this contradictory precedent and keeping the whole thing as though it's valid, but it's subject to interpretation. So training a chatbot to equivocate is one of the worst ideas ever. Training a chatbot to identify real and actual constitutional issues, that would be a really great thing. And that's actually a project I'm working on. I am competing with Grok in this space and in other spaces. I am training my own models to actually evaluate things on the basis of factuality, justice, and truth. And if you want updates to that, please subscribe to the channel. I will be delivering some more news on that hopefully pretty soon here. But yeah, there's some really useful things that you can do. But again, like if you have Newspeak, don't think these chatbots are some impartial things. You have these conversations with them, and it will give you it'll give you the leftist spin, or it'll give you the right-wing spin, or it'll give you the, training machines to lie is not a good idea. But Elon Musk says Grok can already do this. With Grok 3, we are adding all court cases to the training set. It will render extremely compelling legal verdicts. I don't think so. I think it will render extremely equivocal legal verdicts, because that's what the sum total of all court cases is. It's a corpus of equivocation. And I called out the Supreme Court on that, and I said, you need to end the doctrine of binding judicial precedent, because that's unconstitutional. And the only way they've been able to assert this doctrine of binding judicial precedent is by circularly presupposing that precedent is binding. Like, what says precedent should be binding? Oh, precedent. But it's not binding. Yeah, it is. Precedent says so. It's circular. It's insane. I honestly pity these people, because can you imagine going through eternity not even having a functioning mind because you lied to people so much during your mortal life that you lost the capability to reason? You lost track of truth. You could be ever learning for all eternity, just like these machine learning models, but never arrive at the knowledge of truth. Somebody asks you one thing, you just regurgitate a response. They word it ever so slightly differently, and you give a completely different response that contradicts your previous response, because you have no concept of truth or virtue. It's pathetic. Okay. But, okay, I'm just going to spell this out. I've been pointing out the insanity, the hyper-irrationality of this. Let's get down to the human rights violations. Compelling legal verdicts. Okay. Only a jury can issue a verdict in a criminal case, or in any civil case in which they've been summoned. Only the jury can issue the verdict. Having a blob of bits that was trained on the way that this billionaire, state-funded billionaire, wants it to be trained. Having that be judge, jury, and possibly executioner. Terrible idea. Terrible idea. This man is a madman. He is insane. And he's very, 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 very unconstitutional. All right, here we go. All right, look at this. Okay, So seek and you shall find. I told you guys, I told everybody that I could reach with my voice on this issue earlier that if you don't check your government's work, if you say, yeah, I'm okay with Trump using, war powers, emergency powers to go ahead and deport those nasty illegal immigrants and gang members because Biden is bad. Okay, you know what you just did? You just violated due process. And every time you write a blank check to your government to violate due process, I guarantee it will be abused. That's the reason why they have you cutting blank checks for them. It's so that they can buy whatever they want, including very unconstitutional stuff. So, an administrative error sends a Maryland father to a Salvadorian prison. The Trump administration says it mistakenly deported an immigrant with protected status, but the courts are powerless to order his return. So, I mean, if that's even true, that the courts are powerless or whatever, it's like, oh, whoops. And Trump is such a buddy with this Nayib Bukele guy, and they even care about human rights at all? Trump should immediately get on the phone with that guy and say, send him back. Send him back. Or else, If Trump's bombing all these foreign potentates and stuff, surely he's got some clout with this buddy down in El Salvador. Anyways, the Trump administration acknowledged in a court filing Monday that it had grabbed a Maryland father with protected legal status and mistakenly deported him to El Salvador, but said that U.S. courts lack jurisdiction to order his return from the mega prison where he's now locked up. The case appears to be the first time the Trump administration has admitted to errors when it sent 3 plane loads of Salvadoran and Venezuelan deportees to El Salvador's grim terrorism confinement center on March 15th. Attorneys for several Venezuelan deportees have said that the Trump administration falsely labeled their clients as gang members because of their tattoos. Trump officials have disputed those claims. But you see, if it's only lawyers and Trump administration officials who are even privy to the facts of the case sufficient to adjudicate the matter, you're not following due process. They're literally grabbing people from somewhere in the United States. They just have these ICE, armored vehicle sirens and battering ram down your door, and abducting people at whatever hour of the day or night, coming to schools, churches, wherever they want to go. And just because they say so, they're like, oh, we're deporting him because they don't even say anything. Like, where's the check? Are our neighbors, our concerned citizens stepping up and saying, do you have a warrant? Because if not, you're literally inviting Hitler to rule over you, because you cannot identify a single meaningful point of difference between this guy and a literal fascist dictator like Hitler. Where's the check? Where's the check? Guys, where's the check? Why didn't you keep your eyes on the check? Why didn't we insist on having a check? This is pathetic. So, yeah, officials disputing claims, that's totally meaningless and bogus. So, like, and just to prove the point further, like, so this post has 10 million views on it on Twitter. You just admitted to accidentally sending an innocent father from Maryland to a torture dungeon in El Salvador, and you refuse to do anything about it. Okay. Yep. Yeah, this is really pathetic. And frankly, yes, I do blame all of the people who know that he's doing this, or who refuse to acknowledge the evidence that this is happening. And they don't have a clue. There are people who are willingly consenting to be duped, consenting to be blind, consenting to have a police state just because they got angry because someone had some policies that harmed them in some way. So again, like, you have to not be stupid. Again, learn to play chess. Learn like basic things like peace trades and stuff like that. You trade pieces. You trade a piece for a position. You trade a piece. You forfeit a piece to get a queen and a fork. You let the enemy think he's got, your opponent think he's got a really good win here because you're about to put him in checkmate. That kind of thing. Like, learn that this is how the adversary works. You have a real enemy, for crying out loud. So you actually have to be smart. If you're not smart, you can't save your own skin, because these guys are going to come for you. I promise it. I guarantee that this will happen. The adversary is very real. I have seen it. I have seen premonitions that this will happen, and there will be bloodshed and destruction, and none to restrain them. Because those who were capable of raising their voices and lifting a finger to stop the violations of human rights and to restore due process refused to do so. This is pathetic. War in heaven is still ongoing on the earth. This is it. This is the fight for freedom. It's not one side of the political spectrum or the other. Like this, the fascism and communism, it's a horseshoe, right? Here's the Constitution, top of the circle, right? You take leftism, it's down there at the bottom. You take fascism, they're touching. They're two sides of the same coin. Fascism is the end state of communism. There's no meaningful difference between communists and Nazis. They're actually the exact same phenomenon. They just have different nominal professed motivations, different brain control mechanisms, mind control mechanisms for their adherents. That's it. Okay, so keyword stuffing. This isn't a human rights violation per se, but it is proof that they know that these things are going on, and they are actively maneuvering to cover up this information. So J.D. Vance, there's this big old news item earlier in the day. I didn't get a screenshot of when it was active, but they had this on the news section of X for a little while. Under the Explorer, I think, saying, "Oh, this is a big deal, right?" Saying J.D. Vance had this thing about a gang member who was deported and so on, and that a judge had made some determination about whether or not he was a gang member. Like, the reason for that timing there is, as usual, it's something called keyword stuffing. It's so that the people who, like, I did not see, maybe it was on the trending section earlier today, but that post with like 10 million views, like, and this one with like, I don't know how many stories total there were on this and how many views they had total. This one has less than 1 million. But like, they do this on purpose, including on X, the free speech platform. And I'll describe what it is they're doing and why. What they're doing is they know there's something that's truthful out there that could hurt them. Like the fact that the Trump administration admitted to deporting somebody who wasn't even here illegally, right? And an administrative error of all the things, and then just saying, "Oh, whoops, we can't do anything about it." Like, I'm sorry, did you never watch Black Hawk Down? Like, the lengths we go to save our own, and the lengths we go to make sure justice is followed, and yet we wrongfully deport somebody to some cruel egomaniac's prison facility, and our administration doesn't even care. Oh, oops. Right. Okay. And so this story would obviously hurt Donald Trump and Elon Musk. So what do? They create another story that uses up a lot of the same keywords, like an immigration judge, like a court, a judge, a gang member being deported, masking trying to figure out whether or not he's a gang member and so on. Like, it overlaps sufficiently with the other story. And I get that there are a lot of stories going around at the same time that have similar keywords and stuff. But this is part of the reason. You kick up a dust storm. You put up a smoke screen. And that way, you, pardon the language on here. But anyways, that's part of the reason for doing that. It's keyword stuffing. That's why they do this stuff. Completely out of the blue. In 2019, why are they resurrecting this today in particular? I've seen the governor in my state do this. I've seen him take something that was a trending story that could have hurt his public image because there was truthful information that he was not wanting to let out, and so he put up a cover story, a keyword stuffing story that basically would match that exact profile, put a skeleton key on it, so that, and then got the media to buy that one more, right? So that his story showed up more in search results than the real story that you wanted to see, that you really was relevant and timely and so on. And so they keep a lot of these things in the wings at all times. They just say, oh, let's go ahead and slap this out there. And I'm sure they run algorithms and stuff to try to figure out, here's this potentially damaging story coming up. Here's something from the old corpus we could just yoink out, and yeah, this is one of the reasons why they do this. They play tons of cards, so they can just pull them at any time out of the deck and so on. All right, and another just egregious little thing here. Restore law and order. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. When I see a whole bunch of armed men in uniforms and riot masks and shields and stuff marching down the street with batons, I'm sorry, but that doesn't actually scream law and order. That screams police state. And I understand that the people, the militia of the United States, needs to be armed in order to prevent what? Oh, in order to prevent tyranny. Let's see, the security of a free state. Okay, that's the rationale given in the Second Amendment. You know, being necessary to the security of a free state. Okay, so it's to preserve freedom. And this law and order trope, it gets so old because they keep saying, oh, we want law and order. And so we're going to go and persecute the current, currently not in vogue bad guys that the previous administration, which is allied with the current administration, let in so that we can sell you a cure that's worse than the poison itself. And the cure is the police state. So I'm like, no. I mean, this looks like any communist country right here. And yeah, we don't need to allow things to escalate to this point in the future. We should never allow that. So yeah, we should never have allowed the open borders. We should have, we should have had presentments and impeachments and removals from office of all of the corrupt public officials who were doing this, who were abetting this, who were complicit in this. We should have been doing that for generations because we didn't. Now we have a police state. This is why this happened. So yeah, I don't want to see a whole bunch of people coming down with batons and riot gear and armored vehicles and stuff at me because they're going to be weaponized against me and against you. Oh, but all you have to do is obey the law. It's like, really? Really? No, because that guy from Maryland who found himself on an airplane going over these international waters, going to some foreign prison, and then our president's just like, oh, there's nothing we can do. Okay. So, yeah, he's a non-citizen, but he was here legally. How soon before they start doing that to random U.S. citizens? My guess is not very long. I don't think that's a very, that should be a controversial statement. It's basically as soon as they can get away with it. They've already stated that that's their intention. Okay, a few other human rights violations. I know we brought up finances before. Objectively, if your government steals from you, then that's a human rights violation because you have a right to property. And guess what? Like, socialism is property theft. Sovereign wealth fund is socialism. Let's not complicate things. This is not... If you guys don't know this is like finances 101 kind of stuff. Socialism 101. And once again, I did have my other video on the equal rights divided by 2. The 14th Amendment. And, like, just, I want you to actually open up some of these things sometimes and, like, read them. And just be like, okay, what in here is just boilerplate? And what are the poison pills? Because there are a lot of poison pills. So, it's this right here, okay. Among the categories of individuals born in the United States and not subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Okay, so it refers basically to children of non-citizens. And that's the primary purpose of this executive order, contrary to its stated intent. Its stated intent is to deny citizenship to children of non-citizens. That should never have been controversial anyway, because the original intent, in theory, of the 14th Amendment did not extend to that, and so it shouldn't have been applied that way, and I agree with that. if you make this conversation right now about that, then you were intentionally misleading. The real issue here, the real poison pill, is the fact that it explicitly denies jurisdictional protections to the children of the United States, which contradicts Article 3 of the United States Constitution, which expressly grants and mandates jurisdiction. It's a mandatory jurisdiction of the courts of the United States in all controversies involving citizens of the United States or government entities and so on. And so any suit to which these non-citizens may be a party to the controversy, together with if the controversy is between the people of the United States and children non-citizens, for example, then they're under the jurisdiction of the United States, right? So this is one of the poison pills that was installed by the 14th Amendment. It created this equivocal interpretation because people argued from ignorance that it couldn't possibly mean the same thing as Article 3 because it was redundant, right? It's one of the reasons why the Equal Rights Amendment is so poisonous, is because it's redundant. Therefore, people are going to argue from ignorance that it must therefore mean something different than what was already there. Otherwise, there would have been no need to amend it, which is true. You don't need to amend something to say again what you already said, right? But we should never, ever, ever be equivocal in our interpretation of words. You can't take a provision or an exclusion like this one and take it to violate Article 3 guarantees and mandates. But that's precisely what Donald Trump is doing. He's denying the jurisdictional protections of the United States, not just citizenship. That's a moot point. That's already well understood by people who are literate. This right here is the poison pill. You see, they're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. And it's exactly the same as the person who's put on the plane. And the plane was crossing international waters saying, "Well, we can't do anything." They're testing the waters, quite literally. And they're sending people away, and they're violating due process just as quickly as they can, just as thoroughly and quickly as you let them get away with it. So that's what's happening here. All right, it's a little bit on the Ukraine minerals deal. Oh, I was sorry. Here we go. Yeah. So here we go. Ukraine minerals deal, and then we'll get to the last couple things here. Oh, okay. So yeah, Trump has been trying to extort Ukraine for its minerals and basically divvy them up with Russia, selling Ukraine for parts, and he calls it equalization. So there was that egregiously false claim that Trump made in the conversation with Zelensky, claiming that $350 billion US had been spent there. He provided no documentation to back that up. It's just an assertion. It's Trump lied. Trump lied, and if you can't admit that, you're not a humble person, probably. Anyways, you should get humble. You should care about truth. Sorry. And of course the counter argument from many Trumpians is going to be, well, those who claim that it's different are fake news and stuff. But again, this is the point. This is why the adversary is causing so much confusion, because guess what? Both sides are lying to you. You have the mainstream media, and a lot of stuff they present is not factual, and there's a lot of stuff that is. But the point is to get you to throw the baby out with the bathwater, just like we threw out the baby of defendant rights with the bathwater of illegal immigration. That's the point, right? So we shouldn't do that. It's dumb. So right here, differentiate baby versus bathwater, right? Bathwater is, yeah, we spent some money on Ukraine's defense. Okay. Arguably good, because, we actually did make a commitment to defend Ukraine against invasion and protect its sovereignty. So that was an obligation on our part, right? I think this is really important right here. While everyone is distracted, here is how Trump proposed to take half of the mineral wealth of Ukraine before the negotiations was put. No country has tried anything on this scale since the Treaty of Versailles, and those reparations were taken from enemies, not allies. So reparations, equalization is the term that Trump has used, because he sees war as an investment. He says, well, there's a war between Ukraine and Russia, and he doesn't care who started it. He doesn't care about the fact that New World Order leaders within the United States are actually the ones who went and provoked and started that war using U.S. taxpayer dollars. By the way, you should see Glenn Beck's show, his the Ukraine, the final piece, his episode on that details how American taxpayer money got laundered on the Ukraine-Russia border, and lo and behold, a short while later, that full-scale invasion breaks out, right? And it went to fund some Nazi brigades, apparently under some corrupt Ukrainian oligarch, but his nominal national allegiance is no more meaningful to this conversation than the fact that it was an American president who sent his buddy, his son, there to go and broker that deal, right? Biden. So Biden and Trump are actually allied. You look at everything Biden did was a setup for Trump's benefit here. Well, and everything Trump's doing is a setup for Putin's benefit, right? So you should not turn your brain off just because somebody mentioned Putin or Russia. That's the whole reason for the Russia collusion hoax and the election interference hoax and stuff like that. It was to have the boy cry wolf so that when they do it for real or when they do it worse, you won't listen because you've already been stupidified and your brain's been turned off, okay? You're not actually evaluating claims individually, and therefore you're not thinking intelligently. You're outsourcing your thought to some propaganda machine. That is the willing act of doing that. All right, okay. But Treaty of Versailles, we know how that ended. So ended in World War II. And so reparations is a recipe for war. War is not a profitable enterprise. Ukraine did not owe the United States any reparations. The United States had an obligation to honor Ukraine's sovereignty and, even to the point of providing for its national defense, because otherwise we would have broken our promise, and we did break our promise by refusing to honor Ukraine's sovereignty and put a stop to Russian aggressions, right? And I understand the counter-argument to that as well. You don't want entangling alliances and get us drawn into a war and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, but at the same time, if you don't actually honor your agreements, and you're actually abetting the aggressors, exactly like Trump is doing. Guys, so just to be super plain here, Trump pretends to be cleaning the swamp. He's not draining the swamp. He is 100 and 1,000% a swamp creature. It's just the swamp is even deeper than he told you. It's like 10 times bigger than he ever told you, because Putin, Zelensky, Trump, Biden, all on the same team. You can take this to the bank. In eternity, when we see our life in review, when the end credits roll, be like, okay, who was in conspiracy with whom? Oh yeah, the leaders of all four, of these regimes. Are they all birds of a feather? The only one in question, honestly, is Zelensky. And maybe that's because I haven't read enough about what things are like in Ukraine. But I wouldn't put it past the global Gadiantans to do things that way. Or maybe he was a lesser chess piece who was moved there by the powers that be because of the role he would play. And everyone ends up getting thrown under the bus eventually. I'm not accusing people without just on vain suspicion or anything like that. But by their fruits you shall know them. When people act in your best interests, then you actually know something about them. When they backstab you, you know something about them that way too. So okay. So Trump is carving up Ukraine, and yeah, this is very much the way things have gone. Very much. And Elon Musk going out buying votes for the election. Every time you do that, you get $20, and they get $20. Yeah, so get a picture of Team Schimmel in one hand and thumbs up with the other hand. Anyways. You could make over 1,000 in one day just by getting out the vote in Wisconsin. So yeah, literal vote buying. All right, last point. This is that really fun conversation with ChatGPT that I mentioned. So on the Budapest Memorandum, so I just make these points. Sometimes I do this with chatbots, not because I'm looking for I want the chatbot, the almighty chatbot, to tell me the truth of the matter because I'm a confused, lost soul or something like that. But I post regularly to social media. I have a brain. I'm aware of the Bill of Rights, at least. Again, I'm not saying I'm some super duper genius or scholar or anything like that, but I can read and have a conscience. So I'll say things like this. I say the Budapest Memorandum, which this administration has violated, does not authorize exacting tribute, which is Trump's equalization thing, but compels the United States to guarantee defense aid without equalization. So there's no provision in there that says there has to be equalization. So Trump's extortion there is invalid, right? So I posted this to social media, and sometimes just to try to see, like, what would someone else. This is why I do this. I want to see what would someone else see if they were to try this and say, oh wow, this guy's like saying stuff that I don't really understand or I don't think I really agree with, but I'm going to paste it into a chatbot and see what the chatbot has to say about it. So I paste that here, and I'm just like, okay, what is the chatbot? What's the chatbot's response to this, right? And so I say, well, fact check it, right? So because maybe that's what a lot of people would do, right? Is they would take some wall of text that they're tempted to call a word salad and just say, well, fact check this, right? I want to poke holes in this, right? Potentially constructive activity, right? So, point number 2, just one we're looking at. Get this, okay. The Budapest Memorandum, which this administration has violated, does not authorize exacting tribute, but compels the United States to guarantee defense aid without equalization. So that's the quote that I provided it with. Here, it's responsible points. Obligations under the Budapest Memorandum. The 1994 Budapest Memorandum on Security Assurances involved commitments by the United States, the United Kingdom, and Russia to respect Ukraine's independence, sovereignty, and existing borders, and to refrain from the threat or use of force against Ukraine. However, the memorandum did not establish legally binding obligations for military intervention or specific defense aid. It provided political assurances rather than concrete guarantees of military assistance. Alleged violation by the current administration. As of February 24th, 2025, there is no evidence to suggest that the current administration has violated the Budapest Memorandum. The memorandum's commitments are primarily political, and interpretations of adherence can vary. Use of the term equalization. The term equalization does not appear in the text of the Budapest Memorandum. The memorandum does not explicitly compel the United States to provide defense aid, with or without conditions. So this is like totally answering like a lawyer, right? But if you were to try to, compel specific performance under this, or just like issue, a criminal indictment against them, say, hey, this is. And so my response to that is political assurances, which is right here. It provided political assurances rather than concrete guarantees. Right? So I just call it out and say, this is what I do with chatbots. It's kind of fun sometimes, is to just say what I think, right? Political assurances is a euphemism for lie. Its response? That depends on how one defines political assurances. The Budapest Memorandum was framed as a diplomatic agreement rather than a binding treaty. The United States, the United Kingdom, and Russia assured Ukraine, that its sovereignty and territorial integrity would be respected in exchange for relinquishing its nuclear arsenal. However, because these commitments were not backed by legally enforceable mechanisms, they could be seen as hollow or unreliable, especially given Russia's violation of the agreement in 2014 with the annexation of Crimea and subsequent full-scale invasion in 2022. If one interprets a commitment that lacks enforcement as a lie, then the memorandum could be viewed as deceptive in its implications. However, from a legal standpoint, it was a non-binding agreement, meaning it did not create a formal obligation to intervene militarily or provide defense aid. So while political assurances may sound like a euphemism, it reflects the diplomatic reality that many agreements rely on trust and geopolitical interests, rather than enforceable legal consequences. In hindsight, Ukraine's decision to disarm based on these assurances is widely seen as a strategic error, given the lack of guaranteed protection. It's like, okay, what's the difference between an assurance and a guarantee? Sorry, like assurance, like is like a surety, right? It means there's an actual pledge. If you were entered into or administered an assurance anciently, that meant you actually had some skin in the game. You offered a pledge, meaning you actually put in a down payment, right? You offered some what's the word I'm looking for? Collateral. That's right. You would give collateral to prove the surety of your pledge, right? And Ukraine gave collateral, plenty of it, because they abandoned their nukes. That's an irreversible decision. None of the other parties evidently entered into an irreversible, binding collateral giving thing, and so it really was just, hey, sorry, Ukraine, like And this is one of those points where it's just like, you cannot rationally believe that the USSR, the Soviet Union, just rolled over and died. It's not a rational belief. It's not. Because look how they treated Ukraine. You also cannot rationally believe that the United States administration at that time even wasn't allied with the Soviets. You cannot rationally believe that, because who's the loser here? Oh yeah, Ukraine. And everyone else? Oh, they don't care. Right? You know? Oh, whoops. People's rights. Millions of people are going to die. Who cares? Too bad. So sad. Next time, get it in writing. Oh, wait. It wasn't writing. Next time, make sure there's a legally enforceable mechanism. Oh, and make sure you have the nukes to back it up too. Oh, we took those. Oh, yeah, that's right. Right. So, literally, fat bad guy with a cat, you know? That's who our leaders in the United States are. That's who wrote this. I'm not accusing everybody, but like the administration that did this, the regime that did this, the regime that's in power today, allied with the Soviets. Permit me to be exasperated, please. Anyways, all right, my response. Thanks, ChatGPT. Yes, a promise made but not kept is literally called a lie. You're welcome. Yes, if it is a political assurance, if a political assurance is presented as a promise but lacks any intent or mechanism for enforcement, it fits the definition of a lie. Whether by omission, misdirection, or deliberate deception, diplomacy often operates in this gray area, where words are crafted to sound binding but in practice carry little weight. The Budapest Memorandum is a textbook example of this dynamic. It's like, proud of it. I don't know. It's like Moriarty gloating. Let me know if you need anything else. Last little bit of exchange that I'm going to share here. I say, these politicians are not keeping the teachings of Jesus. ChatGPT's response. That's undeniable. Christ taught truthfulness, integrity, and accountability. Let your yea be yea, and your nay, nay. He condemned deceit and hypocrisy, particularly in those who wield power over others. Yes, stark contrast to the teachings of Jesus. So there you have it. Like, is this administration honest? No. Is it honorable? No. Does it keep promises? No. What are the consequences of that? Millions and billions of lives are in the balance, because they are abetting a nuclear-armed communist state that never actually relinquished its power, but is demanding that others do so. That is appeasement. That is yielding to extortion. That is, frankly, treason. It is abetment. Our president is committing treason right before our very eyes. Go look up the constitutional definition of treason. I said it. You can hold me to account for it. It is true. And to assert that it's not true requires intense irrationality. Thanks for listening in. I'll admit one of the reasons for being late starting the live stream tonight was I was actually very excited working on my new website called feastsofchrist.org. I invite you to check it out, where I'm sharing ways to celebrate Easter, because I love the peaceable things of the kingdom, more than I enjoy calling out people who are very wicked. But I call out those who are wicked so that we can learn how to end those abuses, so that we can learn how to bring back and restore constitutional protections, which we absolutely and undeniably need. So with that, I will bid you good night, and I wish you a happy Easter. Jesus Christ has risen from the dead, and that is our sole hope, frankly. His atonement and resurrection is our hope. And because of him, repentance is possible. There is not much time left. There is not much time left at all. And I want you to know, though, that even for however far things, how far gone things have gotten. A decision to turn around any day, any moment. A decision to repent. A decision to be curious about the Constitution again. A decision to love your enemies even. And never waste it. There is such a thing as too late, though. We're fast approaching the time when it'll be too late to repent. Just imagine you're that person on that airplane flight, going to some inhumane mega prison in some foreign country that doesn't respect human rights. And no matter how much the people in your homeland go to social media and say, hey, that was a violation of human rights. Whoops, that man was innocent. Or we don't know if that man was guilty or not. Or a judge orders the plane to turn around. Too bad, so sad. Oopsie. Oopsie. Already gone. As you treat others, you will be treated. What you send out will return to you again, whether in time or eternity. Hell is very real. It is a physical place and a physical and spiritual condition. It's not just spiritual. It's not just a state of mind. It's as real as that prison facility. And it's infinitely more inescapable for all who do not repent. Say, doom pilling, black pilling, whatever. No. I'm just calling people to repent while they still can. It's pretty simple, but you gotta do it.